Ever planted sweet potatoes, watched the vines go absolutely wild, and thought, this is going to be an amazing harvest, only to dig them up and find a few skinny little tubers? If that's happened to you, you're not alone. Sweet potatoes love to grow leaves. They love to grow vines. And if we garden the way we do with tomatoes or peppers, feeding and watering like crazy, we can accidentally grow a gorgeous jungle and almost no sweet potatoes. Today, I'm going to show you how to maximize your sweet potato yield by focusing on one goal: grow tubers, not leaves. You'll learn what actually triggers tuber formation, the biggest mistakes that keep sweet potatoes stuck in leaf mode, and a simple, proven approach you can follow whether you're growing in-ground, raised beds, or containers. And real quick, if you want more practical, step-by-step garden tips that work in real American backyards, hit the like button and subscribe. Also, comment your USDA zone and state, because timing with sweet potatoes changes a lot depending on where you live. All right, let's start with the big idea. Sweet potatoes don't form big tubers just because you planted a slip. They form tubers when the plant experiences the right combination of heat, sunlight, soil conditions, and nutrition balance. When those conditions are off, especially when nitrogen is too high, the plant puts its energy into vines and leaves instead of storage roots. So if your sweet potato patch looks like a leafy green carpet, but the harvest is disappointing, it's usually not bad luck. It's a signal that one or two key conditions are pushing the plant in the wrong direction. Let's walk through the tubers not leaves playbook from the very beginning, starting with variety and timing, because if you mess these up, everything else becomes harder. Sweet potatoes are a warm season crop. They do not like cold soil, and they don't really get moving until the weather is consistently warm. In most of the U.S., that means you're planting sweet potato slips after your last frost date, once soil has warmed up. Here's a simple rule that works in most places. Don't plant slips until nights are reliably warm and the soil feels warm to the touch. If you plant too early, the plant stalls. And when a sweet potato plant stalls early, it can waste a chunk of its season just surviving instead of building tubers. In cooler zones, pick shorter season varieties if you can. In long, hot seasons, think zones 8, 9, and 10, you have more flexibility, but you can also overgrow vines if you overfeed. Either way, the point is this: the plant needs enough warm days to build storage roots, but it also needs the right conditions so it doesn't spend that warm season only making leaves. Now let's talk about what most people do that accidentally creates a leaf factory. Mistake number one: too much nitrogen. This is the big one.
Nitrogen makes plants green. Nitrogen makes them vigorous. Nitrogen makes them look healthy fast. But with sweet potatoes, too much nitrogen is like telling the plant, don't bother storing energy underground, just keep making more vines. And the problem is, a lot of soils already have plenty of nitrogen, especially if you've been adding manure, rich compost, grass clippings, or using high nitrogen fertilizers. If your sweet potato leaves are huge, deep green, and the vines are exploding, that might feel like success, but it can be a warning sign. So what should you do instead? You want a fertilizer strategy that supports root and tuber development, not leaf growth. That usually means lower nitrogen and higher potassium with balanced phosphorus. I'm not going to tell you one brand because everyone shops differently, but you're generally looking for something where the first number, the nitrogen, is not the highest number. Also, slow and steady beats heavy feeding. Sweet potatoes are not tomatoes. They don't need constant fertilizer. In many gardens, if your soil is reasonably fertile, you can get excellent yields with minimal feeding, especially if your bed is loose and well draining. If you want to add compost, use it strategically. A little compost to improve structure, great. A bed that's basically pure, rich compost, especially composted manure, that can push vine growth too hard. The goal is a soil that's loose and healthy, not overly rich. Which brings us to mistake number 2. Soil that's too heavy. Sweet potatoes need room to expand. When the soil is compacted or heavy clay, the plant struggles to form big, smooth tubers. You can still grow sweet potatoes in clay, but your yields often improve dramatically when you improve soil structure. If you're in-ground, loosen the planting area deeply. If you're using raised beds, this is where sweet potatoes shine, because you can create a fluffy, well-draining mix that tubers can actually push through. Here's what sweet potatoes love: loose soil, good drainage, warmth, and consistent moisture without staying soggy. They do not love hard, tight soil, wet feet, constant heavy feeding, and being planted too close together. So let's talk spacing, because spacing is where a lot of people unintentionally trade tubers for leaves. Mistake number 3, planting slips too close. When sweet potatoes are crowded, the vines compete for light and space. The plant can respond by stretching and vining harder, and you get a mat of leaves that shades the soil and makes harvesting harder. Crowding can also reduce airflow, which can invite problems like fungal leaf issues. Spacing doesn't have to be perfect, but give each plant enough room to develop a strong root zone. Think of it like this: each slip isn't just a vine, it's a tuber factory, and that factory needs real estate underground. If you want bigger tubers, don't pack them like lettuce. Now, while we're here, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood sweet potato habits: vines rooting at the nodes. If you've grown sweet potatoes before, you've seen it. The vine crawls along the ground, and wherever a node touches soil, it can root. People see that and think, great, more roots means more sweet potatoes. But here's the catch. Those little roots along the vine can steal energy from the main plant. Instead of putting all resources into the storage roots forming near the original slip, the plant starts spreading its effort across a bunch of small rooted nodes. In many cases, that leads to lots of leafy growth and scattered small roots instead of fewer, larger sweet potatoes. So what do? You manage the vines. This is a huge tubers not leaves move that most gardeners skip. Vine management can be as simple as gently lifting and repositioning vines so they're not constantly rooting all over the bed. You're not trying to break them, you're not trying to stress the plant aggressively, you're just keeping the vine growth from turning into 1,000 little side projects. If you're growing in a raised bed, you can train vines to spill over the sides. That keeps them from rooting at every node, and it also keeps your bed from becoming an impenetrable jungle. And if you're growing in-ground, you can still guide vines into lanes or onto mulch so fewer nodes make contact with soil. Now, some gardeners do light pruning, and I want to be careful here because heavy pruning can reduce the plant's ability to photosynthesize, meaning it may reduce tuber size if you overdo it. But if your vines are ridiculously long and the bed is turning into a vine forest, light vine control can help redirect growth. The key word is light. You're aiming for balance, enough leaf area to fuel tuber growth, but not so much that the plant never gets the message to store energy underground. Now let's talk watering, because watering is where sweet potatoes mess with your head. Sweet potatoes are fairly drought-tolerant once established, but drought-tolerant does not mean ignore them all summer. When the plant is getting established, consistent moisture helps it root in and start growing. But once it's established, overwatering can keep the plant in a constant growth mode above ground. In soggy soil, roots also struggle. Tubers can stay small, or you can get cracking and rot issues depending on conditions. So here's the general flow that works for many American gardens. Early on, keep moisture consistent so the slips establish quickly. Mid-season, water deeply, but don't keep the bed constantly wet. Let the top inch or two dry a bit between waterings, depending on your soil.
Late season, this is important. Ease up. You don't want bone-dry stress for weeks, but you also don't want to keep pushing lush vine growth when you want the plant finishing and firming up the tubers. And here's a powerful trick. A couple of weeks before harvest, many gardeners reduce watering. Not to the point where plants collapse, but enough to encourage the plant to focus on finishing and firming up the tubers. Think of it like telling the plant, the season is ending, store what you've got. Now let's get into sunlight, because sweet potatoes are sun lovers. Mistake number 4, not enough sun.
Sweet potatoes can grow in partial sun, but if your goal is maximum tuber yield, full sun is your best friend. More sun equals more energy. More energy equals more storage underground, if your nutrition is balanced. If your patch gets only a few hours of sun, you can still grow them, but your results may be smaller and slower. If you want big harvests, prioritize the sunniest spot you've got. Now let's address another common issue. People accidentally use the wrong kind of starter. Sweet potatoes are usually grown from slips, not from seeds. If your slips are weak, stressed, or poorly rooted when planted, they lose precious time. Sweet potato season is not infinite, especially in zones with shorter summers. When you plant a slip, what you want is a healthy start that takes off quickly in warm soil. The faster the plant establishes, the earlier it can begin the process that leads to tuber formation. If your slips arrive thin and stressed, baby them for a few days in water or a potting mix until they perk up, then plant when the weather is truly warm. Now let's talk about bed setup, because this is where you can set yourself up for big tubers in a very practical way. One classic technique is planting on ridges or mounds. The idea is simple. Raised soil warms faster, drains better, and gives tubers a deep, loose zone to expand into. In raised beds, you're basically already doing this as long as the soil isn't compacted. In ground, making a ridge can be a game changer, especially in areas with heavier soil or summer rain. Warmth and drainage are two of the biggest tuber boosters. Now, before we go further, let me give you a quick mental checklist. If you want tubers instead of leaves, you want warm soil, full sun, loose, well-drained beds, enough spacing, balanced nutrition with low nitrogen, vine management to prevent excessive node rooting, and smart watering that supports tuber finishing late season. Now let's get into the part everyone cares about. How do you know if your plant is on track? Early in the season, you won't see much evidence. The vines grow first. That's normal. But if you're 60 days in and your vines are gigantic, your leaves are dark green and huge, and you've been feeding a lot of nitrogen, chances are you're heading toward leaves, not tubers.
At that point, what can you do? First, stop feeding nitrogen. Second, don't overwater. Third, manage vines so they're not rooting everywhere. Fourth, make sure the bed isn't shaded by weeds or other plants. Sweet potatoes can outcompete weeds later, but early weed competition can reduce yield. And fifth, be patient, because sweet potatoes often size up later than people expect, especially in regions where the hottest weather hits mid to late summer. Now let's talk about pests and diseases, because stress can also reduce tuber yield. Sweet potatoes are relatively tough, but they can still get hit by things like soil pests that chew roots, fungal leaf spots in humid areas, sweet potato weevils in certain regions, rodents that find your tubers before you do. The biggest yield protection move here is prevention through healthy growing conditions, good spacing, airflow, not keeping foliage wet, and not overwatering. If you live in an area with known sweet potato weevil issues, follow local extension recommendations and be careful about moving plant material around. That pest is a serious problem in some places. Now let's get to the harvest, because harvesting at the wrong time can make all your hard work feel like a failure. Sweet potatoes need time. Most varieties take around 90 to 120 days, sometimes longer depending on variety and conditions. If you dig too early, you get small tubers. If you wait too late and get hit with cold soil, you can damage quality.
Sweet potatoes hate cold. Even a light frost can damage vines, and cold soil can affect tubers. A good approach is to harvest before soil temperatures drop too low. In many areas, that means harvesting before the first frost, or soon after vines start to decline, depending on your local weather. And here's a key tip: don't just rip them out.
Sweet potato skins are delicate at harvest. If you bruise or cut them, storage life drops. Use a digging fork, start farther out than you think, and lift gently. If you've never harvested sweet potatoes before, this is the moment where you realize how far the tubers can spread from the base. They can be wider and deeper than expected, so give yourself space. Now, once you harvest, the next step is what separates okay sweet potatoes from sweet, delicious sweet potatoes: curing. Freshly dug sweet potatoes are not at their sweetest. Curing helps heal minor skin damage and convert starches into sugars over time. That's why store-bought sweet potatoes taste sweeter. They've been cured and stored properly. A good curing setup is warm, humid, and well ventilated for about a week to 10 days. After curing, you store them in a cool, not cold, dry place with good airflow. And by not cold, I mean don't stick them in the refrigerator. Refrigeration can harm texture and flavor. Sweet potatoes store best at moderate temps. When curing is done right, your harvest tastes better and lasts longer. And when curing is done wrong or skipped, your sweet potatoes can rot, shrivel, or stay bland. Now let's circle back to the main theme: tubers, not leaves, and let's make it super practical with a simple do this, not that summary. If you want maximum sweet potato yield, do this: plant warm, not early. Use loose, well-draining soil. Give each plant space. Go easy on nitrogen. Water to establish, then water deeply but not constantly. Keep vines from rooting everywhere. Reduce watering slightly late season to encourage finishing. Harvest carefully and cure properly. And avoid this: don't feed sweet potatoes like heavy feeding vegetables. Don't keep the bed soggy. Don't crowd slimps. Don't let vines root at every node if you want bigger tubers. Don't harvest too early. Don't skip curing. Now let me give you one more advanced tip that can seriously boost yields, especially in raised beds and containers. Temperature matters underground.
Sweet potatoes love warm soil. If your bed stays cool because it's shaded, overly wet, or planted too early, you get slower growth and smaller tubers. But if your bed warms up well and the plant gets consistent sun, tuber formation becomes much easier. That's why sweet potatoes often do incredibly well in raised beds, black fabric mulch, or warm sandy soil. The warmth signals the plant to store energy. Now, if you're growing in containers, here's what to focus on. Use a big container. Sweet potatoes need room. Use a loose mix that drains well. Don't over-fertilize. Container fertilizer can easily go too nitrogen heavy. Train vines outward so the container doesn't become a tangled mess, and monitor watering closely because containers can swing from too dry to too wet fast. Container sweet potatoes can produce great harvests, but only if you treat the container like a mini raised bed, not like a little flower pot. All right, before we wrap up, here's your quick action step for today. If your sweet potato vines are going crazy right now, go out and check 3 things. First, how dark green and lush are the leaves? If they're extremely lush, stop nitrogen. Second, are vines rooting everywhere? If yes, lift and redirect vines so fewer nodes touch soil. Third, how wet is the bed? If it stays wet, reduce watering frequency and improve drainage if you can. Those 3 changes alone can shift your plant from leaf mode toward tuber mode. Now, if you got value from this video, here's your CTA. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who has a sweet potato patch that looks amazing until harvest day. And comment below with your zone and the variety you're growing, because I'd love to help you troubleshoot based on your climate. In the next video, I'm going to cover the post-harvest steps that most gardeners skip, exactly how to cure and store sweet potatoes so they get sweeter, last longer, and don't rot on the shelf. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.